In my mind, there's two different categories of Lego. There's Lego for kids and Lego for adults. And for me, you can put me in the Lego for kids category any day. Hi, I'm Tom Bray since 1954, and welcome back to my audio-only podcast, Since 1954, the podcast. And today I want to talk about this concept of toys versus adult sets, and just why I consider myself in the toy camp. And the best way I can begin to describe it is to talk about another interest of mine for a second, if you'll bear with me, which is model trains. Now, in the model train world, there are two different camps. One is the realistic modelers, and they build these absolutely magnificent layouts that are detailed down to the last rivet. In fact, one of the pejoratives for them is rivet counters. Everything has to be realistic. Everything is beautifully done. And they really produce some spectacular looking layouts. And that's one part of the hobby that's extremely popular, and many people who are involved in model trains do it that way. And then there are toy train collectors, and that's where I fit in. The more toy-like the train is, the happier I am. I can throw a green tablecloth over a couple of banquet tables and set up some track and set up some, very toy-like scenery and run my trains around it and be perfectly happy. I don't have to have it look like a real railroad. And I think that where that comes from is that when I was a kid, the toy to have was, growing up in the late 50s and early 60s, was a Lionel train set. And being born in 54, my cousin who preceded me, he was born in the 40s, he had played with Lionel trains that were, those first post-war sets that, he played with them for a while, then kind of outgrew them, and I inherited them. And I played with those trains for years and added a few pieces of my own. And I still have those trains now, today, even as an adult. And they still run. I've had them, maintained and all of that, but they run. And then when my son was born in the 80s, of course, I had to go out and buy more trains because that's what you do, right? And Lionel, had more different starter sets that were out there. And so I'm a big fan of starter sets because they're so toy-like. And, all the Lionel accessories that come with them. I think most people who love toy trains started that way with Lionel train sets, at least in my era. And then as they grew older, and if they were really interested, they went one of two ways. There was a bifurcation in the road. You either went to the road of being a modeler, where you built scenery and you might then switch to HO, scale modeling, which are a little bit smaller trains than Lionel gauge, or even down to N scale, which is smaller yet. N scale is very popular in Japan because it's small and the space is limited in Japan. People's homes are not as big as here. And so a company named Kato Trains has figured out how to make totally modular train sets where you can put them together on a kitchen table, run your trains, and then put them away. And so you either went to the modeling side where you were building scenery, and sometimes it would take you years to build your layout, the very specific and brilliant layouts, or you were like me and you had toy trains. And you might build a permanent toy train layout, but it was just that, it was not, realistic looking grass. It may be a green tablecloth or green felt, just something that passed for a suggestion of a real railroad. And the main event was the trains, that you would, run around your track. So, and that's the way I roll. In the summertime, I might set up two banquet tables and throw a green tablecloth over them and set up a couple of loops of track, not even with any track switches or anything, nothing complicated, just two circular or oval loops of track and run two trains in opposite directions and just run them around and around and just have the best time and put out some scenery that's very toy looking, like Plasticville buildings or some of the Lionel accessories that, buildings that light up and a gateman that comes out of his little box with a lantern to wave the train on, that kind of stuff. And that's what I grew up with, and that's what I still really love about model toy train collecting and running. And, the new toy train sets, which tend to be the starter sets, do have new technology. I mean, now they are Bluetooth controlled and everybody can have a handheld controller. You don't have just one transformer that runs, whatever's on the track. Each engine is assigned to a hand controller. You can run multiple engines on the same loop of track and control them independently with the technology that's now there in a toy train. So that explains kind of my mindset when it comes to Lego. I'm a toy train collector. I'm a toy Lego collector. And I know that you could argue that Lego in and of itself, all Lego, even the 18-plus sets, are toys because they're made by the world's largest toy company. And yeah, I get that logic, but you know what I mean. When you have a set that's, 2,000 pieces and costs $300 or even $200, then, you're beyond the realm of what is aimed towards kids. And you're into the realm of what's aimed towards either adults or really advanced kids who are Lego builders, who are just, that's their whole heart and soul. But then there are just so many wonderful sets that are, not that expensive, in the $100 or under, or between $100 and $200, or $20. And that are definitely aimed towards kids. And I find myself enjoying probably mostly, if you were to look at the Lego that I build, I would say the majority of the sets that I have are aimed towards the kid side, where, the age recommendation is 7, 8, 9, maybe 10. And I just have, I'm a 10-year-old at heart. I just have the best time building those sets. And the reason I wanted to go through this whole introduction was to tell you that this week I built an alternative build in the 3-in-1 Castle set, which is set number 31120. And I wanted to alert you that there still is zombie inventory out there. And if you don't know, zombie inventory is the inventory that's still available at the retail price that even on a set that's retired, on a Lego set. And so I was surprised when I looked that there were still sets available. When I looked yesterday on Amazon USA, at least in my region here in the Pacific Northwest of America, there were 20 sets you could order. And there may be more, but that when you pull down the menu, you could order 20 at a time. And they're still at the $99.99 price point, which was the original retail price. Now, interestingly enough, right below the listing sold and fulfilled by Amazon for $99 is a secondary market listing on Amazon for $159, the same set, which indicates to me that you're going to see a bump of maybe 50% once that zombie inventory is gone. So that in itself tells me that if you have not bought this set and you're interested, now's the time, while there's still some zombie inventory. But I bring this up because I built the second of the 3 builds you can build with this set. The first build is the standard castle, and the second is a taller tower that's about 15, 16 inches high. And then the third is a kind of a medieval town scene with a windmill and I believe a smaller kind of city tower, and then another building which I believe is like a marketplace type building. And so you could build either of those 3 builds with just one set. I happen to have, because I fell in love with this set, 4 copies of the set. And that's what I want to talk to you about right now. If you're like me and you like toy Lego, and you don't care that the proportion of the building is not scaled to the proportion of the minifigs, I could care less about any of that. Because if you look at that small castle, 3-in-1 castle build, it's just a fantastic, fun set, but it's a toy. It's not the Lion Knight's castle, which also isn't to scale with minifigs, but it's a spectacularly kind of big build. And then you get into the Bricklink sets, which are bigger yet and even more detailed, and also in the upper stratosphere of pieces in set and the cost. But for this 3-in-1 set, I mean, we're talking $100 price point, and there's just a ton of play value in this set. You get 3 medieval builds, and they're all very toy-like, but there's just so much play value in them. So I got to thinking and doing a little price comparison. I've built the second of my 4 sets. Now, I've decided that I'm going to build the little town scene next with my 3rd set, so that I will have all 3 builds. And then with the 4th set, I'm probably going to rebuild the main castle and change some of the colors and maybe some of the structure a little bit, modify it a little bit, basically for another faction, either a faction that I create or another faction that Lego has in the castle theme from past or present. So for the same price, which is $399 of the Lion Knight's castle, I will have an entire medieval castle scene, a whole city of a tall tower, 2 main castles, and a kind of a town scene that would, fill a good extra-sized card table Lego layout, and all for the price of just the Lion Knight's castle. Now, to me, that's a tremendous, tremendous value. And if you don't mind that it's like a toy, if that doesn't bother you, and like I said, you're not bothered by the proportions of it or, all those specs, if you're not a Lego rivet counter like in the train world, and I don't mean that as a pejorative, because I think it's great that people are into the adult sets, which are very detailed and which I love. But I happen to really love the more toy-oriented Lego sets, which is why I love 4+ sets, too. I wish Castle would come out with some 4+ sets. I mean, they do have them, but they're in the Disney theme. And I guess that's fine, because they're also in the Castle theme. It's just the Disney Castle theme, which I'm not really collecting. But my point is, this 3-in-1 set is to be looked at seriously. If you wanted to build an entire medieval kind of fantasy castle world and start somewhere, and you haven't started yet, I'd be spending $300 and getting 3 of these sets while I still can. And by the way, they're about to release another 3-in-1 castle set in the spring, and you're going to be able to add yet another 3-in-1 castle to that scene. So I think this is a way to get kind of going on a fantasy castle world without having to rely on Bricklink or rely on even one of those gigantic sets. Because even just for $100, you could build one scene of that castle, and after you get tired of it, break it down and build the next scene, and then build the next scene. And that's just for one set. Buy 2, 3, even 4 of those sets, and you still haven't exceeded the price of the Lion Knight's castle, and you're getting just an incredible value as far as Lego play goes. And yes, again, it's not the scale or massive look of a Lion Knight's castle. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say I regret building that castle, because I don't. I think that castle's spectacular, and I'm glad I have it. But I also am really jazzed about the idea that with that 3-in-1 castle set, you can just create so many different looks by having multiples of that castle. And what I'm hearing about the next 3-in-1 castle that's going to come out is that there may be a jousting scene in it. I mean, I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of different things. I have no, kind of confirmed intelligence on it. This is just what I'm hearing. So, I mean, imagine having a 3-in-1 castle, 31120, having a couple of sets of that where you have some options. And then depending upon what this other one looks like in the spring, having a couple of those. And you have a whole fantasy castle world for, well under the cost of 2 Bricklink sets. So this is something to consider. I just floated out there as something we may want to take a look at, particularly if you have not yet purchased this set. Just know that there still is a zombie inventory. I don't know how long that's going to last. They must have made a lot of this set because it was so popular. And maybe the market is saturated for it, and maybe that's why there's, maybe everybody that really wants it has purchased it. But I think maybe there are people that think it's gone and haven't really looked closely to find that they can still get this set. So if you're a castle lover like me, do have a look at that and see what you think. And I would like to hear from you whether or not you have multiples of 31120, and if so, what do you do with them? And if you and how many sets you have, because I'm liable not to be unusual in having like 4 sets, and I'm sure some of you have more than 4 sets. I mean, just to have the set for the pieces alone, I think is a spectacular value. And even with 4 sets, I must be honest, I'm considering a 5th, although I have to say that having said all this, seeing that the new, Hobbit Shire thing is coming out, which will be an 18-plus set for $199, I mean, that's a slam dunk. I'm just going to have that just because I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. And I really wasn't kind of turned on by Rivendell because it's just so big, massive, and so expensive that didn't do much for me. But I wanted the Lion Knight's castle more, and since space and budget were consideration, that's the choice I made. But at $199 price point as an adult, it's just toy enough. Like, even though it'll be more of a challenge to build than a true toy set would be, that I'm going to have to add that. I'm looking forward to April 1st when it comes out, and that's near my birthday, so that's probably a slam dunk for a birthday present. So my next step will be to try to figure out how to get that into my Lego Fantasy Castle realm, but it is fantasy, so I'm sure I won't have too much trouble doing that. I managed to get the Wizard of Oz in, so there you go. Now, what I was saying is I would like to know about this 3-in-1 castle multiple thing. Leave a comment for me if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're listening on another podcast provider like Apple Podcasts, you can send me an email at since1954podcast@gmail.com. That's since1954podcast@gmail.com. And I would be happy to get your comment. Well, that's it. Until next time, this is Tom Bray saying, happy building. Take care.